And now, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to New Orleans and a special world over. This is the scene of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Spring Meeting. I spoke just moments ago with Archbishop Joseph Kurtz, the president of that conference. The exclusive interview is straight ahead. And a little later, actor Eduardo Verastegui and David Henry join me to talk about their new film just in time for Father's Day, Catch. It's something all you dads will want to catch for sure. And now to Archbishop Kurtz. He's not been president of this conference for a year, but tonight he'll discuss the lessons he's learned and some of the issues he and the bishops are grappling with this week. Take a look. Your Excellency, thank you so much for your time during
Raymond,
a very
I'm
busy
happy
moment.
to be here.
Let's start with how this position, being president of the Bishops' Conference, how has it changed your life?
Well, in some ways, of course, I had the privilege to serve as vice president
Right.
with Cardinal Dolan, and that was a joy, and he's a great man to work with. So that in some ways prepared me, and the change, I guess, has been that the focus cannot be just on the Archdiocese of Louisville, but also, obviously, on national affairs and, in a sense, on international affairs. I guess in some ways, though, Raymond, the role is really one of service to the bishops in unity in Christ. And so I think that's something I've been doing, trying to do, obviously imperfectly, but I hope to be able to continue that as
What's the
president.
most taxing part of this? Is it the travel? Is it the time away
it's the
from home?
emails.
The emails.
Absolutely, absolutely. They're steady and they flow. The emails are there every day.
Oh, boy.
But thank God for them in many ways, because it gives me a chance to communicate regularly with Monsignor Jenkins and to be up to date on things.
On what's happening and
really
what's
great,
crackling. I was so struck by the fact that earlier in your ministry, your brother Georgie lived with you,
Oh, you know
from
about my brother
1999 on in Knoxville.
Well, actually,
was he with you before then?
Oh, sure. Our mother died in '89. And so actually I was legal guardian for Georgie from '89 until 2002 when he died.
Yeah, and your brother had Down syndrome.
He did. Georgie had Down syndrome. He was 5 years older than I, and did not have some of the difficulties with heart problems or respiratory problems that many people with Down syndrome have, and lived almost to be 61 years old.
Wow.
He lived in 2 rectories and in 1 bishop's house, and my brother George was my older brother, and if you forgot it or if I forgot it, he would remind us. So I'm sorry you never had a chance to meet him.
I would
A
have
wonderful, wonderful man.
What did you learn from him and watching his interaction with the people in your parish?
Well, I think the gift of just celebrating life, about celebrating life, about seeing the gifts in every person, the gift of slowing down. I was able to watch some television programs with him. Little things that perhaps, maybe I could say the gift of family.
You wrote, it was a time to stop and pause and enjoy of that time spending, just sitting around watching television with him. And apparently he knew every television show.
He knew them all. And when we would go on vacation, the parishioners would say, well, Father, we'll miss you, but we'll really miss Georgie. So it was really a joy. I still miss him, and it's just 12 years ago he died.
No, it's a beautiful example, too, of not only giving love, but receiving it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think something that we've certainly seen play out in your ministry. Let's talk about some of the things you are wrestling with this week at the Bishops' Conference here in New Orleans. In advance of the Synod on the Family, the bishops sent out a questionnaire all over the country. What did you learn from that? Any shockers in that?
Well, most of the things we learned would be pretty expected. Namely, that a lot of people know little about the depth of church teaching, but they want to know more. So I think that's a very important thing. I think we learned in a special way something that put us in a good position, that we as pastors are called to serve families. So that although many said rightfully, boy, how great progress has been made in programs of marriage preparation, They felt the remote preparation for marriage, the help of married couples after they get married. We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Another thing we learned, and maybe this came indirectly, was there's a gold mine in faithful witness of faithful families. And that's something that I think I knew, but I think the Synod is going, especially with our Holy Fathers saying we need authentic witnesses.
Right.
I think that's going to come through loud and clear on that important role.
So much of the oxygen in the room over this Synod has been sucked away by this one issue of what to do with divorced and remarried Catholics. Should they be allowed back to the sacraments? It seems in recent days the Pope, Cardinal Maradiaga, and many others have said, no, 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 this is much broader. What are your thoughts on this?
It is. Well,
has the media sort of hijacked this Synod?
Perhaps a little bit. I think I would begin by saying that the purpose is challenges of the family in the context of the new evangelization. And so our Holy Father has said, see the person first, warm hearts, heal wounds. These are things we all need to hear. He has said, accompany people. And that level of seeing that person first means people want to be accompanied. They want Christ. They're yearning for Christ. And in a sense, I hear our Holy Father saying, listen, let's not spend all our time arguing. Let's begin by accompanying people. We all should, in one church, worship God. We are all called to conversion. And so we should be doing this in a way that invites people.
Do you foresee something seismic coming out of this Synod?
Well, seismic in the sense that Christ's grace is going to shine through. I mean, that in itself is...
But not any major disruption or shaking in church teaching or doctrine.
I would hate to... Well, no, I don't believe that there's going to be a change in church doctrine. In fact, our Holy Father has said as much, exactly. No, I think what this is, like many synods, these are, in a sense, opportunities for us, almost marching orders. And so they're opportunities for us to give a focus. Remember Pastoris Dabo Vobis with seminary formation? Look,
and religious life,
And religious life was later. Consecrated life was 4 years later. But these were documents that did a world of difference. Now I see this, the double synod, as our Holy Father saying, let's take our time. We have the great gift of the church's teachings. Let's look at pastoral problems. Let's hear from real people. Let's hear from real people. The Synod always had that opportunity, but we've never had this encouragement and push for people to speak up. And that's been good.
Let's talk for a moment about a document you all are wrestling with here, which is a refurbishment, if you will, of your faithful citizenship document. Now, this really touches on the church teaching as it relates to political responsibility.
It does.
Why do we need a new document? What's new in this recent draft?
Well, let me say this. You're asking a good question, because the document we have now is basically from 2007, the early days of the pontificate of Pope Benedict, and nothing of the charism and gift of Pope Francis. That in itself ought to have us stand up and say, gee, what do we do here?
What's the problem as it is currently configured? Is it, some have suggested that it is, it puts on the same moral plane, if you will, this array of issues that the church is concerned about. Is that a fair criticism?
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. And I would encourage people to read the document in its whole. I have found when I've spoken to people, I would say, well, tell me, where did you get access to this document? And I would often find out someone would say, well, to be honest with you, I read the two headings from a secular newspaper. So depending on what take that particular newspaper has, that often informs how people think about the document. In Kentucky, we have found that faithful citizenship has been a great pathway to renew citizenship and to renew participation in voting, and something we haven't done much about, but we need good informed Catholics to step up in election. So my hope would be that this will be a vibrant document for 2016.
Why not have the domestic committee and the international affairs committee that would normally handle this do it? Why create a special subcommittee or an ad hoc committee
Good
that
question.
Cardinal DiNardo, your vice president?
Good question. Well, first of all, that's a question that should have been asked in 2010, because that's when we did that.
Yeah.
2010 showed the refashioning of the conference. And when we did that, we said, let's move away from silos, where, well, this topic belongs to this committee.
Right.
And in many areas, we have brought people together. I favor that, by the way. And just as we did that actually in 2010, this committee is doing the same thing that occurred 4 years ago.
Really?
In that time, it was a cover letter that was prepared. But we're using basically the same process as 4 years ago, and I think it worked well. So my hope will be, though, that there'll be a fingerprint of Pope Emeritus Benedict and, of course, of Pope Francis in that document also.
There was a big push at this conference to, well, it came up to a vote, what to do about that ad hoc committee on religious liberty. Some said, it's time to sunset this. You haven't had exactly a string of victories here. The Supreme Court weakened the Defense of Marriage Act. You had a number of states, 19 states, that legalized gay marriage. We've seen the Supreme Court wrestling with religious liberty issues. Your thoughts on whether that ad hoc committee still has life or meaning in it?
Sure, sure. My hope will be that it will be robust and vibrant as we move forward. What you described really is a cultural movement that has been in the works for many, many years. Now, in the midst of that, we can point to some victories, and victories that we would not be able to point to when we look at some of the efforts with regard to the HHS mandates. We hope some of the things that will come from the Supreme Court at the end of this month and this time next year, those events would not occur without good education, prayer, and action. And that's what this ad hoc committee has done. I'm thrilled with it. I think it has had a great effect within the Archdiocese of Louisville. You're right. The cultural movements to, if you would, privatize religion, they're strong. Does that mean that we should therefore turn in on ourselves?
Pack up and move on.
I don't think our Holy Father would say that. And so, no, I think we need a very robust religious liberty. Now, remember, we're doing it not because of it in itself. We're doing it so we can proclaim the gospel, so that we can serve the voiceless, all the things that we need to do outside of church, so to speak.
Now, there are some critics, columnists I'm thinking of, who have been writing in recent days, you know, this committee has been too aggressive, particularly toward the Obama administration, and therefore there must be another way. Your take on that?
No, I think we would look on the horizon to do, first of all, to promote an understanding of the precious gift of religious freedom. And that's a positive statement. I believe if you look at the Mass, at the one that actually will occur in Baltimore and will end one in Washington.
Which you'll be offering the homily.
I'll be giving the homily at that last one, exactly. If you look at those are very positive events. They're events that actually foster good citizenship. So I would say the critics are wrong on this. Yeah. And I would also say that many of the difficulties are not issues that we went out and sought. So the imposition that's coming, for example, from the HHS mandate is not something that the Little Sisters of the Poor went out and said, well, let's pick a fight somewhere. No, they're simply trying to serve the poorest of people consistent with their faith, and we think they should be able to do that.
I want to talk about some other issues, things the bishops are advocating and supporting. One of them, Archbishop Wensky, who is chairman of your domestic committee, issued a letter asking the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, to come up with environmental guidelines to limit carbon emissions. And he writes in his letter, the best evidence indicates that power plants are the largest stationary source of carbon emissions in the U.S. and a major contributor to climate change. Power plants have often been located near low-income neighborhoods and communities of color. Air pollution from these plants contribute to respiratory problems, especially for the young and the elderly. Here's the question. When you see a letter like this that is obviously giving the weight of the bishops, their moral voice, to a contentious issue where the science is still not totally in, do you run the risk of stretching your charism to the breaking point, where you're commenting on prudential judgments and making it seem as if it's got the full force and weight of the church behind it?
Raymond, it's always a challenge. I mean, it's one of the challenges I think that the Bishops' Conference faces is to what extent do we enunciate principles and stay there, or to what extent do we enter into the fray, so to speak, and be advocates for a particular bill. And I think as you begin to look at the track record, our influence on bills have sometimes had us change positions depending upon the way in which that bill moves forward. Right. But I think the architecture and the quality is pretty clear. I think our Holy Father is saying the same thing. What effect are these movements in nature having on people? What effect is the economy having on people? The Holy Father has said in Evangelii Gaudium, hey, I'm not an economist. Right. But I do weigh in as a citizen because there are too few citizens who are weighing in on the human dimensions. Right. And so I see Archbishop Wenski as weighing in very carefully on the human dimensions. We will, of course, and we have always, worked with Congress, with the House, with the Senate, in crafting pieces of legislation that, whether we can support them or not, we're going to be able to at least guarantee as much as we can that the human person is being considered in all of these areas.
I remember a few years ago, and it just came to me as we sat here, and I'm going back probably 10 years, but the Bishops' Conference was recommending that the United States government offer nuclear fuel to Iran as a way of sort of bringing it to the table on other issues. One worries when we get so particular in a specific solution, like EPA, please give us climate, ways to control the carbon emissions here, standards. By being so specific, is there the danger that your moral voice is compromised, I suppose, in the larger public?
Sure, of course there is. But there is also a danger of being so removed that there's no dialogue and there's no effort to influence. So I would look at the whole picture of the lobby effort, of the advocacy effort that's being done by Archbishop Wenski and domestic policy, by our Cardinal O'Malley and the pro-life activities committee. I think in all cases, I think the Bishops' Conference is serving our nation well in the efforts being made. You're right that some of these issues are so specific that we'll continue to learn too about them.
Let's move on to a letter you recently wrote, and this was about immigration reform just this week, and you're urging that the Congress act now, the time is now, and this is a moral issue, and obviously the churches are dealing with this every day. These people are in the parishes and at the doors asking and needing help. And you wrote, there's a need to balance the protection of human rights with the rule of law.
Sure.
How do you accomplish that? What does that look like?
Well, when you say how do you accomplish that, that's part of the act that all of us will have to do. I think the two key principles with regard to immigration is, first of all, the rights of people to migrate for their own good and livelihood. Secondly, the sovereign right of nations for the common good, to protect the good of their citizens. Now, how do you balance that? You seek always generosity, but we know that that's why we have laws, in order to regulate even unintended effects that can occur with immigration. But again, where's the Bishops' Conference? We're saying, remember to look at the family, look at the individual who is here. We see the fact of people coming to our parishes who are good, productive people. They're raising families. They're in a sense, contributing to their communities. We understand that there is a need, when we look at a pathway to being able to regularize them, that certain things will have to happen. No one is saying that's not the case, but let's look at the person. And I think there's kind of, as I see it, at this moment in our history, there's a fairly wide view of people coming together saying, we do have to look at the people who are here in the United States, who are real people, who are contributing, and who deserve to be treated with dignity, let alone to talk about the children. I mean, you and I know what's happening in some cases to children who are separated from families. There are some horror stories that I've been told, and they motivate me to want to act.
There is that tension. I've even heard this from some bishops. because you have, and you must see this in your parish, in your diocese. You have half the diocese saying, wait a minute, I'm paying taxes, we've got all this, more welfare programs that could potentially arise from this. I'm struggling to find a job now. And suddenly we've got all these people who frankly have no expectations. They just want to work and they want a different life, and God bless them, who wouldn't want that? How do you balance that? Well, because obviously we have to be open, and I think the church is correct 100% and needs to be the mother to whoever comes to its doors without regard for documents or where they hail from. But what about that other obligation? Because the church has an obligation to its congregants like the government.
Raymond, you're bringing up a good point. Earlier, we talked about the fact that people sometimes make decisions not on great study. Yeah. They make decisions on rather limited understandings of situations. So the first thing I would say is, what did Pope Benedict say? He said, in the era of globalization, we have become neighbors, but not necessarily brothers and sisters. Yeah. And so we need to be able to understand more deeply what the issues are here. Many times I talk to people and they're making judgments on limited information. Not their fault, partly our own fault for not getting information to them. They are difficult decisions to be made, but we're in a nation that has been built on generosity. And so I understand the need. My parents were born in the United States, but my grandparents were not. And many, many people say, well, thank God that we have a nation that has received people. We need to do it in an orderly way. We need to be law-abiding. There's no question about that. But let's find ways that the laws are able to be life-giving, let's say.
Archbishop Tobin recently gave a speech, and he talked about, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said there's an unsettling quality to the Francis effect among bishops. He said that Pope Francis has sort of rattled and shaken, unsettled some bishops. Do you see that? And in what way do you see your brother bishops unsettled by Pope Francis?
Well, so many things. I'm glad I drive a small car. I live right next to the cathedral. I'm glad for that. He inspires, but anybody who inspires us also convicts us. Is that a bad thing? No, I don't think it is. In some ways, I think we are called in our preaching to, what is that expression? To comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. Yeah. Well, in some ways, I think that's what is happening within our church. That's not unhealthy. I like the fact that our Holy Father, though, is also saying, listen, we need to reach out to so many people, as we said earlier, in marriage, but I'm going to take my time. We're going to have 2 synods. We're not going to do it in 1 year. We're going to do it in 2014 and 2015. So there's also a deliberate sense of, I'm going to trust the synodal process. Those aspects I find to be very, very attractive.
Is there a danger that the Francis effect goes too far, in this sense, that the media has sort of latched onto it and used it as a weapon, if you will, in my reckoning, these are my words, against certain bishops, particularly those in long-established dioceses, as a way to almost bully them into divesting the diocese of long-held patrimony? I mean, I'm thinking particularly of your predecessor, Cardinal Dolan. There was a recent full-page New York Times piece basically saying if he really were true to Pope Francis' spirit, he'd sell off the cathedral residence. It's connected to the cathedral, guys. It's been there for almost 100 years.
Raymond, our Catholic people are pretty smart. What I have found is that they are not shocked that the media will try to bring about sensational stories. In fact, they understand that. And that there's a percentage of people who will be on the rallying cry whenever something happens in a secular paper, but the majority of people have a lot of savvy. And so I would say, no, I think, of course there's dangers that something can be co-opted. There's dangers that something I say within the Archdiocese can be co-opted and used by another. But I stand with Pope Francis in saying, no, we have to keep repeating the truth. If somebody gets it wrong, I'm going to have to say it again so that they understand it well. So no, I would give credit to the faithful Catholics throughout the United States. They have a good bit of savvy, and they know where there is a call, let's say, for detachment that is true and real, and others that seems to be taking cheap shots, let's say.
Yeah. I mean,
that'd be the way I would look at it.
Extravagant lifestyle is one thing. A long-held residence that's at the center of a diocese, I think, is another. And I think to just start, you know, do we sell off St. Peter's because this, you know, what do we? I mean,
no.
There's a limit, I think, and a point where you have to.
Don't you think that's you can trace that throughout the history of the church?
Sure.
Well, in every age, there has been that tension. Maybe there needs to be that tension.
Well, that
Our Holy Father saying, hey, we need to be a poor church. We need to make sure that we don't turn in on ourselves, but that we're going outward. That's the movement we need to capture and kind of bottle, if you will, to use. I think that's healthy for the life of our church.
Let's move on to this new audit, which was just released on the sex abuse crisis, which seems to be lessening. 936 allegations of sexual abuse last year, in the last year that was recorded. It wasn't actually a calendar year. Of the new 370 allegations, only 9 involved children, 2%. Two-thirds of those cases happened between 1960 and 1984, and 80% of the victims in those cases were male. What do you see in this audit that gives you pause, or what trends do you see?
Well, a couple of things that I have to repeat, they're obvious, and one is one victim of abuse is one too many. And I know that's been said, but it really is true.
Oh, it's horrific.
What a great injustice and scandal to the people who have been affected. What a great lack of trust, sacred trust in the church that needs to be restored.
Sure.
So that's the first thing to be said. Has there been progress? I think, thank God, there's been great progress, because what they call that bell-shaped curve that they thought was going to keep moving as we reported each year actually has been pretty much fixed between, as you said, 1968 and 1984. We're not proud of those years, but I don't know if I could give full credit to this, but I mentioned Pastoris Dabo Vobis a while ago. That was in the early 90s. Seminary reform, if you would. Human formation was addressed. I think many positive things that the average Catholic was not even aware of occurred in the 1990s, long before even the terrible public revealing of these scandals in the early 2000s. So yes, there's progress. We have to be careful that we don't have what we might call charter fatigue, that people start to say, well,
it's been 11. This is the 11th audit. Is
exactly,
that right?
exactly. But in the Archdiocese of Louisville, I believe that there's a very good spirit. I think there's a code of conduct that our priests are adhering to. I think there's also a sense of trust that young people have in the church. And that's a good thing, and I'm pleased for that.
Well, what all of this shows, what this audit seems to demonstrate, is the church is watching, and it's transparent on these issues. And what other organization can you say has modeled itself or done
the
same?
We sure hope. We didn't, in a sense, these efforts were somewhat forced upon us, and thank God they were by the media. Thank God, there's a good example. But having said that, you're right. We hope that our society will benefit, and if in some small measure, the efforts we've made can be actually a help to the wider society, then we want to do that. Pope Francis has said the same.
Yeah, that number, when I first read it, I thought 936 charter, but many of these, 2/3 of them happened in the deep past, between the 1960s and the 1980s. And before, as you said, a lot of these reforms kicked in, so that was a bit consoling to see that.
No, you're right.
Final question, what is the issue or event that the average Catholic, the one sitting at home now or driving in their car, should be attentive to in the coming months?
Well, oh gosh, you would say one.
Yeah, okay, give me two.
Listen, be students of the Synod on the family. It's going to be in October. We have 2 weeks in Rome. The working document, or the Instrumentum Laboris, I'm told will be in language English, perhaps before the end of this month. Be a student of it. I'm sure it's going to be made public. These are things that require, and thank God for participation. So that's the one thing. Let's get ready for the World Meeting of Families, September of 2015 in Philadelphia. Let's not give up on our efforts with Catholic Charities and others groups that are really serving the poorest of the poor, and let's promote religious freedom. The fortnight that will be in its 3rd year.
The end of June into
you
the
said
top
1,
of
and
July.
that's 4.
That's 4 or 5. You sneaked a few past me.
Exactly.
Archbishop Kurtz, thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Good to be with you, Raymond.
Thank you. You dads will not want to miss our next segment. It's a new film, perfect for Father's Day. It's called Catch. We'll tell you all about it when The World Over Live continues. Stay right there.
You are. You just need a little more practice with your dad.
Somebody has to put food on the table.
Just stop saying you're going to be there when you can't.
Welcome back to this special edition of The World Over from New Orleans. I recently caught up with actor David Henry. He is the writer and producer and director of a new film called Catch. It's about fathers and the time they spend with their children. Now, David is probably best known to audiences from his work on The Wizards of Waverly Place over at Disney Channel. He is collaborating this time out with actor Eduardo Verastegui. I caught up with both of them. Take a look. David, I want to start with you. Where did this idea for Catch originate?
It actually started on set of Little Boy. Eduardo cast me to act in his feature film Little Boy, and I had met one of the filmmakers on the project, a guy named Alonso Alvarez Barrera. And I had been wanting to direct a short film for a very long time. I got to write and direct for Wizards of Waverly Place, so it was my dream to be a filmmaker one day and to sort of be able to control my future creatively. So I knew I had to make a short film first. And when I met this kid Alonso, I watched his short film Crescendo, one of the best short films I'd ever seen. So I pretty much hounded him to collaborate with me, and we came up with Catch.
And Crescendo was, of course, something, Eduardo, that you worked on.
Yes.
This was a fantastic film about the birth of Beethoven, right?
Yes. Well, actually, same story. Alonso Alvarez is a very good friend of ours. He's from Tampico, Tamaulipas, Mexico, and he came to me with the idea of Crescendo, and I fell in love with the story, and it was hard for me to say no to be involved in this story as a producer. And where Patty Mallette, Justin Bieber's mother, you know, joined the project as an executive producer, and it is the life of the mother of Beethoven, and it's the importance of, you know, to recognize the dignity of the human person, you know, and to always defend it from conception to natural death. And this movie is just very profound. Not only is it designed to entertain, but to really inspire people to do the right thing.
And David, this movie Catch is really about the dignity of the human person and the dignity of that relationship between fathers and sons.
Right.
How much of this came from your personal experience?
I think I definitely related to a lot of the story in that my father came from a very poor household, and he wanted to provide the lifestyle for my family that he didn't ever have. So that came with a lot of sacrifice. I've labeled it the good dad problem. It's the father who wants to provide for the family, but at what cost?
Right.
And my dad definitely sacrificed a lot of time trying to provide for us. And not using my father as an example, but any fathers, you know, you come to that point where you're not sure how to quite balance the time.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of theme that we hit on. And I showed what that looks like through the point of view of an 8-year-old boy.
Yeah.
I showed how that makes him feel, and we go on a nice little journey sort of highlighting that theme.
popped up. I have to get back to work.
But you promised.
We'll work on those pop flies tonight.
You have said in interviews about your mother and father, Jim and Linda, they sacrificed more than anyone will know. How so?
Yeah, they, I mean, you know, when you have a kid who says his dream is to be an actor and you live in Hollywood and you know no one in California, 99 out of 100 people will go, yeah, give it up, kid. There's no way you can do it. That's crazy. Yeah. My mom believed in me. She took me to California. She got me helped get me in front of agents and managers. My dad worked extra hard to be able to afford a home in LA, a home in Arizona. They for months at a time went without seeing each other just because they believed in me and my brother so much and our abilities so much. And
they moved the family from Arizona.
Eventually, they moved the family from Arizona, yes, but my dad was going back and forth. He was in Arizona, my mom and I were in LA, and it was a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice on both of their parts, and I don't know how they did it. It really was a blessing.
Did you ever miss your father the way this little boy does?
Of course. Yeah, sure. Always miss my dad, yeah.
Eduardo, how did you get involved in this project? I mean, obviously Crescendo was part of the inspiration here. How did you decide to jump on as a producer?
Everything started because of what David just said. We met at the set of Little Boy, and I discovered, you know, not only a great actor but a great filmmaker, because David told me that he wanted not only to act, but he wanted to direct, and the kind of films he wanted to direct, you know, were exactly the films that I wanted to be involved. So when he came with the idea of making and directing Catch, again, just like I said to Alonso, it was hard for me to say no to be involved in this project that is designed, again, not only to entertain but to make a difference. And what makes David a great filmmaker is not just that he's very talented in how, you know, he tells the story, but the story is full of heart, you know, and as Beethoven said, what comes from the heart goes to the heart. At this film, we put all our heart, and you see his soul, his heart, his mind, his love, his everything in this short film that I'm sure is going to touch many hearts around the world.
Yeah, no, the little boy is enchanting.
Incredible,
in the film. And he resonates with all of us because, dads, we all have the guilt. I mean, the moment you run off to do something or immerse yourself in a project, you constantly feel that tug that you wish you were with the kids, you wish you could take them with you. And the film sort of, I love how it honors that. We see a father struggling, trying to make ends meet, and yet there's this little boy that needs his time too.
And it's very important, these kind of stories, Raymond, because you know, the average percentage in America, parents having meaningful conversations with their children every day is less than 10 minutes a day. But in front of the media is more than 8 hours a day. So we know who is educating our children now in our days.
The TV, the Xbox.
Not parents, it's TV, it's videos, it's
Netflix,
movies, all that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's just how you use it. You can, if you use it good, you can make a difference. If you use it wrong, you can poison our society. But this short film is designed to inspire parents to spend quality time with their children, which is very important.
No, it's critically important. And David, we're seeing throughout the culture the ripple effects of kids being raised alone. The number of single-parent households is going through the roof. And you've said there seems to be a stigma that your generation, the younger generation, has with regards to family and even having kids. Explain that.
I mean, just a lot of the conversations that I have in Hollywood with different people that I know, it's like, you know, just when you bring up family, I always bring up my big family. I love my family. I love my cousins. I love my aunts. I love my uncles. It's great. It's the best thing ever. And then I ask young girls in their mid-20s or whatever, when are you gonna, you know, wouldn't you want to be a mom one day or settle down and have kids? Oh no, it's me time. It's me time. Like, okay, all right. What? Like, kids are bad? Like, I'm gonna get a dog. Really? You're gonna get a dog?
That's the beginning and the end.
That's the great. That's fantastic. It doesn't make sense to me. The greatest thing in the world you could do is share love with something that you create. I mean, and share your heart with someone else. Like, how on earth would you want to pursue a life of love and not share that with with your
others,
family,
and
with
have,
others,
and have
yeah.
a piece of you go on, and
Exactly.
the heritage and your traditions go on. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah, Fido can't quite communicate that into the future.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense.
Tell me about your own journey. You are perhaps best known, certainly to my children and to many others, from the Wizards of Waverly Place, from That's So Raven. Before that, you did the CBS show How I Met Your Mother.
Yes.
How has this journey been for you?
It's been very eye-opening to me in that along the way, I always knew I wanted to write, I always knew I wanted to create, I always knew I wanted to make an impact for the better. I just didn't quite know what my outlet was, and I didn't quite know when that opportunity would be made available for me. I was very lucky to write for Wizards of Waverly Place, and then once I did Little Boy with Eduardo and the whole team at Metanoia, we all just connected so well on the types of movies that we loved, and the types of the impact we want to create on audience to inspire people to instill change in their community in a better way. My favorite movies growing up were movies that left the theater with you. And that's the potential art has. If you look at art in the very beginning, why some of the most beautiful architecture in the world are churches, is because they were used to try to touch something intangible and to give you that feeling. And that's what art has the capability of doing, of touching something inside of you. It's almost like you're trying to touch the heavens, you know what I mean? And I think movies, especially for our generation, it is a platform that can be used in a very positive way.
Has this been a hard transition for you from the Disney alumni to what you're doing now? Some of your colleagues who've made this transition, it's been
Sure, a little rocky.
A bit bumpier.
Yeah.
And grindier.
No, there's, you know, with it depends, because a lot of kids, they get involved with acting before they realize they want to do it, or they might be forced into it. So a lot of the times when kids will finish a show when they're very successful as a youngster, they might not want to act after that, or they're like, you know, I made enough to sustain my life, I want to go do something else, you know. So a lot of kids fade out that way. But the kids who want to take it seriously when they finish Disney Channel, I think there's a good way to do it. You know, the show built up a great audience for me, and I want to mature with that audience. And I don't want to do anything that will be offensive to them or to lose their support.
How big a role did your personal faith play in the making of this movie and wanting to make a movie like this about fathers and sons and family?
I think the relationship with a father and a son is so important. And if you have a good relationship with your father, it's preventative in so many aspects in terms of later in your life and having a healthy life psychologically as an adult. There's no doubt, every psychologist in the world will tell you there's a direct correlation between your mental state and how you were raised. And if you have a good relationship with your father, you automatically associate your father and your parents with authoritative figures later in life. And especially, yeah, and you make that correlation without even realizing it subconsciously. So if you get along with your father and you have a good relationship with your father, it's just going to make it easier for everything else later on in life. So I want to, in a small way, you know, I didn't even realize that when I was writing it, but in a small way, we shine a light on a problem that could become worse and could cause, you know, wounds. So we're helping shine a light on something that can bring healing.
Eduardo, I want to tie something together here, because David also, you weren't practicing your faith for a good number of years.
Yeah, no.
And you too sort of fell away from your faith for a number of years until you were involved in a film, and you had an English coach, whom you and I know. I won't mention her name, but she was sort of critical in your return to your faith.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us how that happened?
Well, it's not like I left my faith. I grew up Catholic. I thought I was a great Catholic only because I was going to Mass once a year.
Oh, well.
That was my...
that is the minimum requirement, so you're okay, I guess.
Once a year, and I thought, you know what, this is the kind of mentality that sometimes you have. You know, I'm not a criminal, I'm not a saint either, but I'm a good person, you know, I don't really harm anybody, and I'm a good guy, you know. God knows that I love him and he's merciful, therefore you give yourself a license to do pretty much whatever you want to do in the name of, well, I'm not perfect, you know. So until one day I realized that I was following many lies in my life, because I grew up in a culture thinking that in order to be happy, because I wanted to be happy, and in order to be happy, you need to have success, fame, pleasure, power, and all those things that society tells you that if you achieve to the top of the mountain and you achieve all those things, you're going to be somebody in life. Therefore, you're going to be happy. And after many years of trying to pursuing all those dreams, I realized one day that I thought I had everything, but on the other hand, I had nothing. I was very empty. And at that moment, that's when I met my English teacher, who changed not only taught me English, but changed my life by asking me a lot of questions, like, for example, what is the purpose of life? How are you using your talents? Who is God in your life? And using the Socratic method for many months. After 6 months, I realized that my faith was not the center of my life, not because I didn't want it to, but because I didn't know my faith. And how can you love what you don't know? And at that moment, I made a promise to God. Plus, first I got on my knees and I said, I'm really sorry for all the things that I have done that offended you and offended my audience, and I was very responsible. I was not responsible in what I was doing because of my ignorance. And
then you turned down a lot of projects after that.
Well, after I made that promise to God that I will never work in any project that will offend my faith, my family, or my Latino culture, I knew that the price may be that I will never work again in this career. So for 4 years, I had to turn down every single project because everything that I got offered, was talking about the things that I promised that I will never do, until I realized, okay, I need to become a producer, because I was tired of waiting for a project that will portray a role, portray a man as a real man. So I realized that the only way how you can have the power to control the message is only if you become a producer. That's how I started my production company.
That's pretty amazing. Just growing up in Hollywood, hearing that story. Anyone who just says, "Okay, I want to become a producer,"
right? Good luck.
there's 500 people every day that do that and try to do it, and it's a nearly impossible feat. So the fact that you actually you pursued that and got that movie made, that's mind blowing.
No, it's unbelievable.
Mind blowing.
And the other amazing thing is, you start a production company with guys who, like you, are broke.
Oh no, 2 crazy guys who were.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I mean, we're 3 crazy guys, completely broke. I was in, our office when we started this company, Metanoia Films, was literally in the living room of my house, mi casa, su casa,
su
casa, and with a little table and a sofa and a cell phone, and now we're producers, and we have no idea what we had a vision.
In mind.
We had a vision. We wanted to make films that will have the potential not only to entertain, but to make a difference in people's lives, elevating human dignity. And our hope was, as a filmmakers, when people see our films, they will leave not only entertained, but touch, move, and inspire, wanting to be a better person. And our first fruit of that mission was Bella. As you know, you have been an ambassador of our movie, Bella. Second project is Little Boy, which is when we met.
Now this is coming out. Tell us about this movie.
Coming out at the end of the year. It's just a beautiful fairy tale for adults through the eyes of a little kid that is 7 years old, but looks like 4. And it's World War II. His father goes to war, and the kid, his best friend leave him, which is his father, and the entire movie is the adventure of this little kid trying to achieve the impossible, to end World War II so he can bring his father back home alive. And the older brother of Little Boy is David Henry, London, one of our lead actors in the movie, who became like Marlon Brando on set. Wait till you see this guy, you won't recognize.
The movie hit me in a very profound way, because it was directly dealing with a theme that I had been debating internally for a very long time. Where do you put your faith? You got to put your faith in something. Everyone puts their faith in something. I have faith that this chair is going to hold me up right now. Everyone puts their faith in something. Are you going to put your faith in yourself and your abilities to determine your own reality? Or are you going to put your faith in something bigger than you? Something along the lines of hope. And it brought me to tears. It was the best script that I had ever read in my entire life. And I told my agent, my manager, if you don't get me this role, I'm going to be very upset. Wow. And I went in and I had one of the best auditions of my life. I met Eduardo, I met everyone. I drove up on my motorcycle.
A la Marlon Brando.
Yes, literally, he was Marlon Brando. So he did an amazing job, and I'm very, very pleased. And not only I discovered an amazing actor, but now a great friend, a brother, a great filmmaker, and now we're working together. And Little Boy was just the beginning of something. I hope it will last forever, a friendship that will last forever, and hopefully together we can change the world through art.
Well, and Catch is a big part of this. What do you want fathers to take away and do as a result of Catch?
The movement that we're trying to create with Catch is to get fathers just to spend quality time with their kids. Because at the end of the day, a dad's got to provide. You got to provide. That comes with certain sacrifices. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with dads working their rear end off. That's a good thing in itself. Yeah. But when you're at home, are you really at home? You know what I mean? You could be rolling calls, you could be busting emails out, you could be trying to set up the next deal or whatever it is. When you're at home, the gift of time to a kid means so much more than any other toy your hard work can buy him. At the end of the day, again, that's a good thing. You know, working and trying to provide for the family. That's all great things. It's what a man has to do. But the quality time at home is what I'm talking about.
That time spent is critical.
Yeah.
Thank you both for your time. Oh, you're here doing Paul Blart.
Yes.
The Mall Cop 2, which to my children is like, this is the godfather of comedy in our house. What has it been like being on this film with Kevin James?
Oh, the best time ever.
I mean, we're so spoiled. I mean, we have the best. Kevin is just an amazing human being. Again, not just a great actor, great producer, great director,
Hilarious
great writer.
comedian.
He's just, his heart is bigger than, you know, this continent. And what a generous guy. The movie is so funny. It's very entertaining, very funny. Has a beautiful messages, you know, about friendship, about father, you know, what's a real father, talking about Catch, you know. And it's coming out in April. We're here in Vegas shooting the movie until the end of June. And you're gonna love this movie.
It's very funny. So Paul Blart goes back. He gets invited to a Mall Cop of the Year convention at the Wynn in Las Vegas. So he's super stoked, super excited. He gets here, and his daughter and I develop a little connection right off the bat. We end up getting kidnapped by art thieves.
Oh.
Earlier on in the film, Eduardo is the head of security for the Wynn. Him and Kevin have friction at first. They're sort of like, who are you type of a thing, like very, very funny.
You know, between him and I.
Yeah. And then they have to team up to end up trying to come rescue us.
Oh, I see.
We get kidnapped from the art thieves, and then they got to come get us. And Eduardo's busting out all sorts of crazy action hero moves.
And the comedy ensues.
Ensues.
It's fantastic. You're gonna love it.
Can't wait to see it. Thank you both. And tell me, where can people find Catch?
Yes, catchtheshortfilm.com. They can go to catchtheshortfilm.com, and also we're going to be getting on iTunes very shortly.
And it's going to be released on Father's Day.
And yeah, and you can check it out Father's Day, because it's a big Father's Day movement. So it's a great gift to a father, a great gift to a family member.
And you want to tell them that every single time that they download the
yes.
short film, you're helping a nonprofit.
A fantastic nonprofit called Family Life Works is getting hugely benefited from this short film. Family Life Works is a nonprofit that helps instill virtue in families and helps to build strong core family values. Again, those preventative measures to try to build good virtue in family, so that way you have a strong, healthy development as a family and later on in life.
To see David Henry's Catch, go to catchtheshortfilm.com. Catchtheshortfilm.com. That concludes the show, but be sure to join us next week when country star Colin Ray joins us, and Fox News anchor Brett Baer will join us to talk about his son's struggles and how he coped. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo from New Orleans. See you next time. Bye now.